But then, the curve of his smile flattens. Not in anger or annoyance, but in some far deeper emotion that Steed can't quite place. He looks like he's weighing all the secrets of the universe. He looks at Steed as though he is the one at the centre of it all. Steed can barely bring himself to breathe when Ed tucks his thumb and forefinger under his chin and holds his gaze.
My cat is being so meowy right now. It's Beans, I love you. Hey everyone, Carly here. Quick show update. We're adding something new over at our YouTube channel, which has honestly been super neglected. Once a month over there, we're thinking the first Saturday of every month, perhaps, we're gonna do a YouTube live called Gay Pirate News Hour, where we cover the latest Our Flag Means Death fandom news that has happened in the last month. So if you aren't following us on YouTube, definitely give us a follow over there, and the link to the channel is here in the show notes. This week's Minisode features the first 3 chapters of Close to Home by xoxoemynn, read by Baby Kraken. I love the fun, upbeat energy of this one. It's got high-level shenanigans and adorable romance. It's got feels. It's got everything that you love from a modern AU fic. To top it all off, Baby Kraken does the voices and sound effects so well. This fic is explicit, but the first chapter is not. Here's the summary. Looking for a fake dating AU in a modern setting? This is the story for you. It's 15,000 words, 5 chapters, plus a sweet epilogue. It's a story that features a classic friends to lovers tale starring notable, lovable idiots, Edward Teach and Steed Bonnet, and it's filled with shenanigans, intrigue, and maybe even a ghost or two. Story is presented as is, but a happy ending, both literally and figuratively, is guaranteed. Written for the AU August 2024, Day 17 prompt, Realtor. If you like what you hear here, please head over to xoxoemynn and Baby Kraken's AO3 and give them a comment and a kudos. You can also read the rest of the fic, link below in the show notes. Now let's get to it. This is Close to Home by xoxoemynn, read by Baby Kraken.
I will be doing the voices. Love cookies? Then you'll love this cookie cutter home, right in the heart of suburbia. This 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath home will make you feel like you've stepped onto a 1990s sitcom set. So many charming amenities you'll love fixing up once you make this 1972 house your home. The house has a fucking white picket fence. A white picket fence, rose bushes, flower boxes under each window, and a big blossoming tree out front with a swing hanging from one of its branches. Oh, Steed is going to love this one. Right on cue, Steed's car pulls up behind Ed's. He hops out quickly and removes his sunglasses. "Sorry I'm late," he says. "I was having trouble choosing the right outfit for my character." Never one to pass up this particular opportunity, Ed looks Steed up and down. He's in a lavender and plum houndstooth blazer over a crisp white shirt, the collar unbuttoned just enough so Ed can see a few golden curls at his chest. His aubergine trousers are slim. So slim, Ed thinks he may be able to make out every line of his spectacular calves. "Eyes back in your head, Teach." Crossword puzzle creator, right?" Ed asks, very pleased with himself for remembering their story. Steed nods, his lips pursed in an adorable pout. "Still feels like it's missing something, though." Ed rubs his chin, considering. "I might have something." Steed's eyes light up. No, his entire face lights up. And he's an idyllic day at the beach with salty air rustling through their hair. He's a rainbow bursting out from the clouds after ages upon ages of rain. He's a shooting star bursting through a deep purple sky that Ed can't help but make a wish on. A desperate plea to be mine, be mine, be mine. But that's neither here nor there. Ed opens the back seat of his car and rifles through the overnight bag he keeps there. Well, it's not really an overnight bag, because he's been spending precious few nights anywhere other than his own cold, lonely bed. Since his heart only has eyes for the charming, somewhat bratty man who is currently seeking his assistance perfecting his costume for the afternoon. A heart with eyes. Gross. Okay, Ed says, think I've got it. He hands Steed a pair of non-prescription eyeglasses. Try those. Crossword puzzle creators probably spend all day squinting at those teeny tiny boxes, yeah? Bound to need a pair. Oh, you're right, Steed breathes and eagerly puts them on. Irritatingly, they make him look at least 1 billion times more attractive. That selfish fucker. Taking no consideration for Ed's poor, weak, eyeballed heart. Perfect! You always know just the right details, Ed. Ed's grateful for his beard, because it hides at least some of the flush that must be appearing on his cheeks. He disguises the rest of it by digging back through his bag for one more item, buried deep in one of the side pockets. His fingers linger upon it. It was a small, sentimental item passed on to him from his mum, and he keeps it in his bag of costumes and props, not for play, but because he considers that bag to be his Steed bag, which means he'll always keep it safe. His pulse quickens. Could one small piece of silk give all his secrets away? That's just a risk he'll have to take, because he knows it will make Steed happy. And he will never allow Steed to have anything less than the absolute perfect experience. Not if he can help it. Here, he says, and holds out the red silk, the final touch. Steed's jaw drops slightly. You know, I considered a pocket square before I left, but none of them felt quite right. May I? Ed asks. Steed nods. Please! Ed carefully folds the silk square and tucks it into Steed's lapel pocket. You're the greatest puzzle maker this country has ever seen, he says as he continues to fuss with the silk. Hell, the world has ever seen. You're smart and creative and clever. There's no one like you in the world. You're going to wear a red pocket square that's a bit unexpected, something that makes you stand out. Because you do. Ed's hand hovers over Steed's chest. And just for a second, because this is as decent as an excuse as any, he lets it fall, so it's right over his heart. It beats steadily under his palm. A firm, hello, hello, hello. And Ed wonders if he'll ever feel it beat faster to the cadence of want you, need you, 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 you. But for now, he simply allows himself to enjoy this passing moment when they can stand here, close, breathing the same air, so naturally in sync that Ed can almost convince himself that it's real. And you? Steed whispers. What are you today? Ed smiles, gesturing down at his outfit, fitted joggers and a deep purple muscle tank, and then a collar with a little brass bell dangling from it. I'm a doggy yoga instructor, of course. Okay, technically it's a cat collar, not a dog collar. But he was a bit limited in his options on such short notice. So it was either this or one that had good boy bedazzled on it with little sparkly rhinestones. And that made Ed feel a little less than zen, not at all befitting of a yoga instructor, doggy or otherwise. Plus, he really liked the way this one jingles. He gives a little shimmy. Steed laughs, and Ed laughs in response, and drops his head to Steed's shoulder. And it feels so natural, which is good, because this is allowed, because those are the rules. They can do whatever it takes to sell their story. because fuck knows the realtor is going to do whatever they can to sell this house. Well, aren't you two just the cutest couple? They smile and wave politely at the older woman walking past them and towards the house, then turn back to each other. Steed waggles his eyebrows, and Ed, fully invested in his character, thinks the only proper way to respond to that is to tap his nose with a softly uttered boop. So he does. "Shall we see our new home, darling?" Ed asks, holding out his hands. Steed smiles up at him, all too achingly adoringly. "I can't wait." They'd been at this routine for 3 years, ever since Steed's divorce. At the time, they'd just been good. Best, the very best, better than Ed ever could have dreamed of. Friends, who'd met through their local theatre troupe while performing in a production of Cats. Steed had mentioned that he needed to look for a new place and had been dreading the whole ordeal. And Ed, already head over heels in love with Rum Tum Tugger and looking for any opportunity to spend more time with him, had offered to join him on the quest, just for some moral support. It had gone swimmingly, smashing, splendifically, just really fucking good. They found Steed a great place, a cute little apartment with a picture-perfect view that wasn't all that far from Ed's place. Ed tries hard to not think too much of the fact that Steed expressed that as a perk. It was apt to make his heart think things it had no right to think. It was a bit smaller than what Steed was looking for, and he was disappointed when the landlord said the garden round the back was decidedly not a communal one, and no, she would not take suggestions from her tenants on what to plant. But it served its purpose. What's more, Ed and Steed had a blast looking at places. There may not have been anything they enjoyed more than getting to have these little glimpses into people's lives. Or at least the lives they allowed people to see. The bits they thought were appropriate for the public. The bits they thought would make a good impression. Good enough to warrant a year-long lease anyway. Except there'd be things like a living room that was painted in red and white stripes so it looked like the inside of a circus tent. Or a triptych of windows that looked suspiciously like a dick. Or a patio table set up in the dining room, complete with an open umbrella to block out the sunshine that came from the hole in the roof. "Well, that's just bad luck," Steed had muttered, and Ed had snorted, and then they'd started giggling so much that they had to excuse themselves. Turns out, judging people and their taste in home decor was really fucking fun. But it still felt a bit unfair, judging rentals, since things like carpet in the bathroom and doors that could only be closed by lifting them entirely off their hinges were really the fault of crappy landlords rather than the tenants. So they upped their game and started showing up at open houses for homes for sale. And, even better, some of those came with cookies. Really fucking good cookies. There was one realtor who went by the name of Roach, of all fucking things, who was honestly a pretty shitty realtor. Went a million miles an hour, barely gave anyone time to actually look at their surroundings, had a weird tendency of pointing out all of the issues with a place, but then saying things like, "Knives are knives, spackle's spackle." But he made fucking phenomenal cookies. His were the best open houses. So that just became their thing, picking one of his listings, showing up, judging the fuck out of the place, and hopefully getting a sweet treat or 6 for their troubles. Except they quickly realised that Roach would catch on to them if they were just themselves all the time. And if he caught on, no more cookies. It'd be a lot safer. Not to mention a super cool and fun challenge that would allow them to continue to hone their improv skills. To come up with a new persona each time. Or so Steed claimed. And if their personas just happened to be dating, engaged, married to each other, well, it's not Ed's fault it's a convenient cover story for why they'd be touring houses together. And sure, maybe it was a bit akin to torture, perfecting this pantomime of a perfect partnership, with the two of them slipping so easily into their roles and immediately riffing off each other, like they actually were a couple, and Ed and Steed were the fakers. Maybe it did remind Ed that, as sweet as it was, he'd never have the real thing. Maybe he did go home and have a good cry over a pint of ice cream a few times about it. Whatever. It was still a fucking great way to spend a weekend. As long as there were houses for sale, and as long as Steed was interested in continuing their game, Ed would keep developing intricately plotted storylines for his characters, and scouring thrift shops for appropriate costumes, and walk into every single house with Steed on his arm like they were ready to come home. "By the way," Steed whispers, as they take in the Tuscan-themed kitchen of their perfectly staged stage for the day, "you look great. Love the little bell." Ed sticks his face in the nearby cookie jar, sadly empty, to hide his blush, though he rather thinks the jingle jingle of his bell gives things away a bit. Thanks. He knows Steed is obviously just talking about the costume. Of course he is. It's fucking brilliant. With his outfit, his collar, and his perfectly messy bun, he looks every bit the pretentious hipster wellness guru who preaches a low-key, blissful lifestyle while spending 3 hours in front of a mirror to make sure his slut strands fall just so. Ed doesn't take offence to that simple fact. They have a bit, and he is committing to it. But if his bit also allowed him to show off his jawline, and if it also accentuates his long legs and all the tattoos on his arms, and the one his clavicle in a way that he knows, because he's a man with big, beautiful brown eyes, is objectively attractive. Well, listen, Ed had mostly made his peace with the fact that he and Steed would never be more than friends. But that didn't mean he couldn't nudge a little "what if" voice along by showing off some of his assets. You know, just in case Steed happened to be an arm man. Because Ed knows what he fucking looks like, alright? He's not too bashful or modest to admit that his arms are fucking hot. And good for showing doggies how to do downward dog, and fixing things around the house, and reaching cookie jars on high shelves, and holding on to his boyfriend. You know, if his boyfriend was interested in that kind of thing, and it did seem like maybe his boyfriend, okay, fine, boyfriend, very well might be interested in that kind of thing, or at least the outfit, in a professional capacity, or professional. Fucking fuck with all those quotation marks. Beautiful kitchen, isn't it? Roach asks, clapping his hands together, drawing the attention of all the potential buyers in the room to him. Such a charming backsplash, you know? The current owners antagonised for months, sourcing just the right tile. Beautiful, Steed agrees, and far too casually loops his arm through Ed's. Darling, you know what it reminds me of? Our first date at the Olive Garden. "Aw, yeah, babe," Ed croons, dropping back into character. "Those artificial vines complemented your eyes so beautifully." "You always know just what to say, love." Steed rubs Ed's shoulder, causing his bell to jingle slightly. "Can you imagine this being our home? We could break out the good candles and enjoy our boxed macaroni and cheese by the ambient light of a flickering candle." The problem is, Ed can imagine it far too well, and imagines it more and more with each room they view. In the living room, as they make a show of getting comfortable on the sofas covered in shiny, squeaky plastic covers, he imagines himself and Steed spending an entire weekend searching for just the right furniture. Because these are obviously not the right style, who knew what the current owners were thinking with this flagrant misuse of space? Testing each of them out for both comfort and durability, he imagines Steed coming home with a sampling of swatches and trying them all out at different points in the day, determined to find just the right shade that would brighten the room and make it feel like them. When they tour the smallest bedroom, which has an admittedly very cool bed shaped like a convertible, Steed makes a comment about how it's clearly a sign, because a convertible is actually his dream car. And Ed wonders if it really is, or if it's just for the bit. And either way, he simply has to know once they've dropped the act. When they enter the bathroom, Steed insists on testing out the water pressure because he knows Ed's very particular about his showers. And Ed bumps his shoulder and points a teasing finger at him and tells him, "Oh no, it's actually you, sweetheart." And Steed lets out a self-deprecating laugh and shrugs his shoulders in a classic, "Ha, guilty" gesture. And Roach raises an eyebrow at them, but then offers a pleasant smile when Ed raises an eyebrow right back. And all the while, Ed thinks about how he's seen Steed's bath, and how he has all these fancy serums lining the vanity, and finds himself wondering if this place would have enough storage space for both of their beauty regimes. When they're in the primary bedroom, Steed tusks and points out how their bed is much bigger, and he's just not sure if the positioning would work in this setup. The flow is all wrong, and Ed nods in equally concerned agreement. But in his mind, he's already drifting off, imagining waking up with Steed, as soft daylight filters through the curtains. And as they're walking through the hallways, taking in all the photos of the family currently living there, all smiling and happy and making their own memories, Ed replaces them all with images of the two of them. The ones from their past theatre troupe productions and their trips to the beach, and in all their various house hunting costumes, as well as ones still to come in the future that they could build together. Fuck the life of an actor. His imagination really gets carried away. "Nearly new washer and dryer," Roach is saying. "Now, one's gas and the other's electric, and they're located on opposite sides of the basement. But that's not too annoying." "No, not too annoying at all," Steed says amiably. "I personally love traipsing my soaking wet laundry 5 yards across a filthy concrete floor." "And I'm sure you noticed the exquisite stenciling in all the rooms," Roach continues. "You know, I heard sponge painters making a comeback." "I do love retro," Ed says. He realises Steed is no longer next to him and is momentarily put out before he realises he's made his way to the closed-in patio and is waving enthusiastically at him. "Look, darling," Steed calls out, "this would be perfect for your doggy yoga studio." "Doggy yoga," Roach repeats sceptically. "How interesting." "It's very lucrative," Ed says. "Hey, do you happen to have any cookies? I'm famished. Can't buy a house on an empty stomach." "Oh, is that why you haven't bought one yet?" Roach asks. There's something about his tone that makes Ed wonder if he's onto them and their whole brilliant cookie acquisition scheme. But he quickly dismisses the thought. Their disguises have been impeccable. There's no way this guy would suspect a thing. Still, Ed doesn't appreciate his tone. He could be a doggy yoga instructor. He can do anything. "No matter," he sniffs. "I bet they came from a box anyway." Roach gasps, holds a hand to his chest, clearly deeply pained. Good, Ed thinks, as he goes to join Steed. If his heart is going to hurt, it's only fair that their realtors does too. This is Chapter 2 of Close to Home by xoxoemynn. We are flipping for this newly renovated model home that can't wait for you to give it your own personal touch. Contractor very helpfully left all of those out so you can start from scratch. No beige here. This house was flipped with care and painted from floor to ceiling in a highly agreeable grey. It's great. Steed grimaces as his waistband threatens to cut off all circulation to his lower extremities. His trousers are nearly painted on, but his personal assistant, Lucius, had insisted the style would be just the ticket to finally get Ed to notice him and to show off his best assets. Your legs, anyway, he'd been quick to point out. The butt. I mean, it's cute in its own way, but the legs are definitely your main selling point. You're going to want Ed imagining them wrapped around his. Because that's his clever plan. Suggest coupley activities to his beautiful and brilliant best friend until his beautiful and brilliant best friend starts to associate those things with Steed. Although, to be honest, Steve's beginning to think he should stop taking love advice from Lucius. None of it's worked so far. He's tried everything, suggesting to Ed they keep up this little charade, cosplaying as a couple, really playing up the relationship angle while they tour homes, being sure to call him darling and love, pointing out how beautiful and brilliant he is at every turn. And yet Ed never seems to take the hint. Steve's beginning to lose hope. Maybe the man really isn't at all interested. And why would he be? He sighs, an immediate mistake, as the pressure of his waistband on his diaphragm makes him temporarily black out. Fucking Lucius. You okay? Ed asks, as they make their way up the path leading to today's house. Ed, of course, looks gorgeous as always. Today he's in loose tweed trousers that somehow perfectly accentuate the curve of his bite-sized bum, a cream thermal shirt, suspenders, and a pageboy cap. His hair is once again pulled back in a messy bun, although it somehow has a completely different effect than when Steed saw him with this same style last week when he was a doggy yoga instructor. Oh, yes, sorry, Steed says. Didn't have a big enough breakfast this morning. Mentally he curses. That was the absolute worst thing to say, because now Ed's going to say, oh, damn, maybe we make this a quick one, then we can grab something to eat. May still be able to catch the brunch specials at the Silver Moon. And Steed does love sharing meals with Ed, especially at cafes that serve all-you-can-eat pancakes that make them just the way he and Ed like them. Maybe with a nice mimosa to go with it, but not when putting one single additional morsel in his body would probably make him burst out of his seams. How humiliating! If he's losing his pants in front of Ed, he'd much rather it were a pleasurable experience. Sure, Steed forces out, wondering if maybe he can discreetly undo a few of the buttons of his fly without looking like a pervert. Or, maybe this place will have the jumbo-sized cookies. Ed's eyes light up. Yeah, hope so. Today's open house is a freshly flipped house in the city. Steed can practically still smell the paint when they walk through the grey front door and enter a grey living room with a big grey couch and grey laminate flooring. How grey. Roach is, of course, standing right by the entrance, so he can greet all the prospective buyers. Welcome, welcome, he says, ushering them all in. He cocks his head, considering, when he sees Ed and Steed. Have we met before? You look familiar. I doubt it, Ed says, linking his arm through Steed's. We're from the other side of the country. I'm looking to expand my business, so we're seeking a secondary residence. Ah, of course, Roach says. And what might that business be? It's a very exclusive artisanal cafe, Ed says. I create bespoke lattes tailored to match each customer's astrological sign and blood type. Darling, you're far too modest, Steed says. You should see the art he creates in the foam. The secret is only using milk made from pine nuts. I see, Roach says. Do you work for the business as well? Oh, no, I could never, Steed says. The public and I simply do not mix. He pauses for dramatic effect. I'm a cheese sculptor. Like for a fancy grocery store? Ed, bless him, looks deeply, deeply offended. No, for a prestigious invite-only art exhibit. He's working exclusively with Limburger. It's breathtaking. He heaves a great sigh and casts wide, pitying eyes at their realtor. But I doubt you'd appreciate it. I'm sure you're right, Roach says, and gestures for them to continue making their way through the house. Please, make yourself at home. Kind of hard to do, Steed mutters under his breath, once they're suitably far enough out of Roach's earshot. Christ, it's like they exorcised not just the demons out of this house when they renovated it, but its very soul. Yeah, Ed says. He's making a beeline for the dining room, yet another cold, sterile room, in hopes of finding Roach's tray of cookies there. Sadly, there's only a single vase of white artificial roses. Might as well be in hospital, or an office building where they perform surgeries. That might actually give it more life, Steed says. He glances around the room, wrinkling his nose. He can't think of anything snarky to say. This is just depressing. Yeah, we could never live here, Ed says. He continues into the adjoining kitchen, which is painted a slightly lighter grey and has a grand grey granite island right in the centre. Though it's somehow even duller than the rest of the house, it does have one thing going for it. A tray of jumbo chocolate chip cookies. Fucking jackpot. It's silly, because this is all just a show, and Ed's just playing the part of his partner. But something in Steed's chest flutters at the natural way he says, We could never live here. Of course, we couldn't. We are looking for something else. We. All the way home! A near hysterical voice giggles inside of Steed's mind. We couldn't, Steed asks, the first word silky sweet on his tongue. He thinks perhaps we might be his favourite pronoun. First person plural. First person. The first person who ever made him feel seen. The first person who seemed to understand him. The first person who ever made him feel interesting and fun and worthy. Plural. Because after such a long, lonely life, it's so much better with two. He wants to hold on to the we for as long as he can. Even if it causes him to pass out from lack of blood circulation, because fucking hell, these trousers are tight. Nah, we couldn't, Ed says, taking a big bite of cookie. He moans slightly as he swallows, a sound and emotion Steed tries not to think too deeply about because of, again, the potentially lethal trouser situation. Well, I probably could. I've lived in worse spots, but not you. Oh, well, Steed's not exactly sure how he feels about that. It's not that he's fishing for compliments, exactly, but he really wanted more of that delightful we talk, not separating themselves into I and you already. How do you mean? Steed asks. Place is boring as hell, Ed says, taking another bite of cookie. No life, no personality. You need colour, character, pizzazz. This house has plenty of pizzazz, Roach says, suddenly appearing behind Ed's shoulder. You'll notice the contractor opted not to include a refrigerator in the kitchen. He realised it was taking up valuable storage space, so he put an extra pantry there instead. How many places can say that? Ed turns slowly, narrows his eyes until they are dangerous slits, and says in a low voice, Where do you expect my husband to store all his cheese for his art installations? Roach blinks. You could put one in the garage? Ed rolls his eyes and looks back at Steed, the cold disdain on his face replaced by the familiar, amused fondness Steed is more accustomed to seeing. At first, Steed thinks he's going to make some sort of joke, some sort of cutting remark at how fucking ridiculous this house was, how it was less of a flip and more of a flop, and, speaking of, perhaps they should just call it a day and go to the beach. Oh no, these trousers would not do well in the sand. Perhaps they could stop by a cute little boutique on the way. But then, the curve of his smile flattens. Not in anger or annoyance, but in some far deeper emotion that Steed can't quite place. He looks like he's weighing all the secrets of the universe. He looks at Steed as though he is the one at the centre of it all. Steed can barely bring himself to breathe when Ed tucks his thumb and forefinger under his chin and holds his gaze. Soft, burning, unyielding. "Love," he says, "you deserve better." And then, before Steed even has a chance to remind himself how to breathe again, Ed kisses him. It's barely more than a brush of Ed's lips against his own. They've exchanged kisses like this before, usually in greeting or goodbye, or when they've had one too many margaritas. It doesn't mean anything. It's just part of the act. Ed, the esteemed pine nut milk latte artist, expressing his undying love for his darling cheese sculptor. Steed knows this. He knows the routine. Hell, he's an actor, for Christ's sakes. He's well versed in the art of theatre. He knows the line between reality and performance, and this is firmly in the latter camp. But when Ed looks at him like that, oh, it's just so easy to forget. Steed's lungs finally remember their usual routine, although they nearly suffer a relapse when Ed gives him the most adoring smile Steed thinks he's ever had directed at him. Thankfully, for the safety of his mind, lungs and heart, Ed steps back and grabs another cookie. "You know, Roach," Ed says, "if you tell me what you put in these, I may be able to work out a deal to have them in my cafe." Despite the fact that doing anything beyond breathing makes his feet tingle, Steed can't help but laugh. And it's a real laugh. Just Steed, as himself, watching Ed. Ed, his best friend. Ed, who can make him smile even on days when he's determined to sulk and stew in his emotions. Ed, who was there for him on some of the worst days of his life. Ed, who is brilliant and beautiful and funny and talented and so fucking gorgeous that sometimes Steed can't even believe he's real. Ed, who made him finally feel excitement for the future. So much excitement that he can't just imagine one lifetime. Every time Steed's mind is at rest, he thinks of another, considers some other possibility for the two of them, some other potential twist of fate. And then every weekend he's lucky enough that Ed joins him on these adventures. And they get to act out one tiny slice of life in one of these thousands of imagined futures Steed imagines they'd share. Steed could be a butcher, a baker, a candlestick maker. He could be absolutely anything at all with Ed by his side. And if the worlds where their lovers exist only in the realm of their imagination, well, Steed considers himself fortunate to be in love with an actor. Steed, come listen to this," Ed says, waving Steed over with 4 impatient fingers. "Roach is trying to tell me, that whatever's in these cookies is some kind of trade secret. Can you believe that? I was just telling him we could teach him a thing or two about trades, such as trading this recipe for an exclusive bespoke latte. My treat." Steed hits his mark, right next to Ed, close enough so their hips just touch. Ed wraps his arm around his waist, draws him in. Not as close as Steed would like, but close. Close enough. This is Chapter 3 of Close to Home by xoxoemynn. Think you can't afford a Victorian mansion? Think again. This stunning home has a 1-to-1 ghost-to-room ratio, and you can charge them whatever rent you see fit. Whether they pay will be up to your collection skills. Come write your name in the fine layer of dust covering all the surfaces and make this your place today. House sold as is, no negotiations. The ghosts were very strict on that. Ed heaves a great sigh and stares at the dilapidated Victorian mansion in front of him. Last week's open house had pretty much been a bust. The flipped house had been so devoid of any kind of personality that it wasn't even enjoyable finding details to snark about. He and Steed had made their exit quickly, not too long after Roach once again refused to give Ed the recipe for his cookies. Ed had been hoping to extend the day with Steed regardless, but Steed had begged off, claiming that he wasn't feeling well. To be fair, Steed had seemed a bit breathless most of the day, and more than a few times Ed caught him holding his belly with a rather pained expression on his face when he thought he wasn't looking, which really was a shame, because those trousers he'd been wearing looked nearly painted on, accentuating every curve of his beautifully muscled legs, and his arse so flat that Ed damn near ached with the desire to see if he could build a house of cards atop it. Fuck. He'd look good. But then Ed had felt like a bit of a dick, lusting after a man who was clearly having some kind of gastrointestinal upset. Still, in his defence, Ed would be lusting after Steed in pretty much any state. It was just the Steed of it all. It was an incurable affliction, and the only cure was more Steed. And so, Ed had pored over all Roach's listings until he found a house that had personality coming out of its arsehole, or whatever the house equivalent of an arsehole was. One of those fun old-timey cellar doors, like in The Wizard of Oz, although nothing really comes out of a cellar. Maybe a chimney if that house were a Pomeranian doing downward dog. No, wait, that was his role from 2 weeks ago. Focus, Ed. Oh, but in his own defence, that would be a fun future career to have in the back pocket. House yoga instructor. That would be way more fun than a doggy yoga instructor. Ed could wear a tool belt and maybe swing a hammer around while going through all the rooms. That could both draw Steed's attention to his arm muscles and potentially freak Roach out enough that he'll be terrified into finally giving Ed his fucking cookie recipe. Fucking brilliant. Lots of options for Steed too. He'd already been an interior decorator, but maybe he could be a home sweet home sweetener, or make curtains woven from strands of his own hair. Maybe he'd even weave some of Ed's hair into them as well. That would be romantic as hell. Fuck. He's getting ahead of himself. Come on, teach, focus. Big, spooky, Victorian. This is a house they could spend hours in. 3 floors plus an attic, 12 bedrooms, 7 baths, and probably a few secret passages. And the listing even promised ghosts, which technically should put Ed off the house, given that toward the very top of his list of personal rules for himself, nestled between never fall in love and when in doubt grab 2 cookies, is do not fuck with ghosts. But it'd be fine. It's not like ghosts can hurt him. They can't even fuck. Ed suddenly yanked off the wraparound porch and behind an overgrown shrub. Shit. He's clearly pissed off the ghosts by doubting them. Fuck off, ghosty. He's finally got something to live for. He can't go down like this. What if Steed shows up and Ed's not there and thinks he stood him up? Ed puts up the fight of his life, flailing his elbows, kicking his feet, and is just about to start with the teeth when he finally hears it. Ed! Shh! It's me, you nut! Ed immediately stills. Steed? Of course it's Steed, Steed says. He's dressed in all black, just like Ed, which, in Ed's defence, really makes him blend into the shadows, much like a ghost. Who do you think it was? Ed shrugs, attempting to look very cool and unaffected for a man who just about had a heart attack because the love of his life grabbed him. That doesn't matter. Why do you grab me? I bought the rest of our costumes, Steed says, holding up a canvas bag. Can't let anybody see us getting into them. That would ruin the effect. Ed sighs. As always, Steed's right. All right, let's see. A few minutes later, they're wearing matching white dickies, embroidered with overlapping green, red, blue and yellow rectangles. Took me all night to finish, Steed says, as he hands Ed a headband. But I think they pop out so much better than if I used felt. Ed accepts the headband, which is a sassy striped number that matches the rectangles on their dickies. Steed looks fucking adorable in his. Ed hopes he can pull it off half as well. Fucking brilliant. They make their way to the front door, where, of course, Roach is waiting, just inside to greet all of the prospective buyers. Welcome, gentlemen, welcome. What striking outfits you have. Thank you, Steed says. We didn't have time to change. Our flight from Paris was delayed. I'm sorry to hear that, Roach says. What were you doing in Paris? We were competing in an Uno tournament, Ed says, linking arms with Steed. We play doubles. I see, Roach says, with a wide, confused smile that makes it clear he fails to comprehend the brilliance of Ed and Steed's careers. And did you get Uno? Steed blinks, long and slow. We play doubles, he says. Roach blinks. Steed blinks back. Ed blinks for good measure. Wonderful, Roach says. Well, make yourself at home. There are cookies in the dining room. Perfect, Ed says. We're famished. Together, as though in a three-legged race, but without a physical link between them, and also in no particular hurry. Maybe the opposite of a hurry, because Ed would like to stay this close to Steed forever. And also because he's still not convinced a ghostie won't come out and snatch them from beneath the floorboards. They make their way toward the back of the house. Nice long corridor, Steed comments. Could hang loads of cursed paintings here. Ed nods. With candles, maybe floating sconces. Gotta have the full effect. With this length, that may be a fire hazard, Steed says. Perhaps we should consider artificial candles. They make very realistic ones now. Fuck that, Ed says. If we're buying a haunted mansion, we're going all out. Not going to buy a cursed house and then not risk it going up in flames in the middle of the night after weeks of weird creaking noises and wailing from the attic. We need a fucking performance. And a fucking insurance payout, Steed says. Maybe with that we can buy our next vacation home on the French Riviera. Now we're cooking with gas, Ed says. Sounds like a great non-supernatural excuse for the inevitable inferno that overtakes our humble abode. Shouldn't run into any issues with the insurance then. Ed chuckles. Fuck, this hallway goes on forever. And it's all twisty and turny with flickering lights and... Is that a cobweb? Oh, fuck, no. That's a spider? And she's descending rapidly toward Ed on a long, thin silk strand. He does not like that. He does not like that one bit. Steed, Ed hisses. I think maybe we should skip this one. Place is giving me the heebie-jeebies. Well, it certainly would take a special type to live here, Steed whispers back. Yeah, a fucking ghost. A floorboard creaks ominously below Ed's feet. Somewhere, somehow, both off in the distance and right in his fucking ear, anguished wails reverberate through the walls. Steed! Let's just steal the plate of cookies and go, Steed says. I still have the bag. Fuck the cookies, man, Ed says. This place is... There's a loud slam, and all the lights rapidly surrender to the sudden gust in the corridor with a low... What the fuck? Holy shit, what's happening? Ed, are you alright? Steed, I don't think... The entire house seems to rattle on its foundation. The darkness enveloping them is disorientating. And even though Ed knows, objectively speaking, they were just in a hallway, he's beginning to doubt himself. If they're in a hallway, why can he hear chains being dragged along the floor? Why does it sound like heavy furniture is being shoved all around them? Sending china plates shattering upon the rotten floorboards. Why can he still hear the incessant wailing that is now reaching an operatic pitch? there's only one possible conclusion. Like Icarus, he flew too close to the sun on these little house hunting excursions with Steed, and now they stepped foot in the last house they ever should have approached. How arrogant they were to enter a house that was clearly fucking haunted. Fuck, he knew better. His ma always told him, don't be stupid, Ed. Don't go fucking around with ghosts and spirits and things that go bump in the night. But no, he had to follow his heart and his dick and that perfect blonde savoury snack of a man. And now here he is, about to die in a dusty old mansion so all the, no doubt, legion spiders can spin him a burial shroud. Icarus fell. And now, so doth Edward teach. Although, he supposes, it's not half as hard as he fell for Steed Bonnet. And if he's going to go, he really should finally say it. Steed! Ed shouts above the cacophony of shrieks and moans overlaying the ominous percussion of toppling furniture. I love you! What? Steed shouts back. I can't hear you. It sounded like you said you loved me. I do, Ed shouts, even more loudly this time. I love you. I love... There's a sudden crack of thunder, so deafening it causes Ed, who is ordinarily as cool as a fucking cucumber in these life or death situations, to stumble and fall right into Steed's waiting arms. If the situation weren't so dire, he would have swooned. Steed. Ed whispers against what he thinks must be Steed's chest. He's not able to finish the sentence. He's still frantically formulating in his mind when he feels soft lips cover his own. With a soft moan, he pulls Steed closer to him. Fuck. If this is how he's going to go, it's not all that fucking bad. Could use some better ambience. And he's still really fucking peeved to be sharing this space with the goddamn spiders, but dying while being kissed to high heavens by Steed Bonnet in the midst of a moment so dramatic film critics would have called it a cliche. Not bad. Solid 8 out of 10. And honestly, it's not really a bad thing for there to be room for improvement with the first kiss. Gives you something to aim for with the second. Like, fewer spiders. Of course, there's the minor fact that they may not have time for a second kiss, given the whole about to be murdered by a vengeful ghost, most likely in an old dusty nightgown with a funny cap on his head and a knife in his hand thing. But what the fuck is going on here? The door slams open and the lights flash back on. Ed first looks at Steed, all wide-eyed and mussy-haired. Then they simultaneously turn their heads to see Roach, irritation plain on his face, standing in the doorway. They look back at each other, and then back at Roach, and then, as though coming to their senses at the exact same moment, drop their arms from one another and take a step back. Ed tries not to whimper at the loss. He's almost successful. We should be asking you that same question, Steed snaps, regaining his composure before Ed. I know the advertisement said the house was as in condition, but I'd think you'd take at least a little care for the safety of potential buyers. I assure you, monsieurs, your safety was of my utmost concern, Roach says. Unfortunately, it's a rather competitive marketplace, and some people are not above a bit of sabotage. He bangs the wall with the side of his fist. There's a low groaning noise. And then the wall finally falls away, revealing a parlour that looks like it could have belonged to Ed's grandmother. Well, no. Ed's Quay was a fucking badass who decorated a house like it was an Andy Warhol pop-up exhibit. Probably Steve's grandmother, though. Ed had heard stories, and she seemed just the type to have pink floral wallpaper to go with the dark green floral couches to go with the mauve floral rug to go with the bowl of caramels on the coffee table that have probably been there since 1902. Inside said parlour was a rather stunning black woman in a striking red power suit, standing next to a smaller but surprisingly built blonde man with a scarf tied around his forehead. He was holding what looked to be an old-fashioned tape recorder with a bunch of buttons on them, all of which had some kind of scribbled-on label. And right now, there was the sound of glass breaking, booming from its rather tiny speakers. I told you to yesterday, Roach says, casting a pointed eye at the other couple. No funny business at my open houses. You can put an offer in like everyone else. But it's my Jackie's dream home, the man says in a strong Swedish accent. We can't just let someone else put an offer in. Don't worry, sugar balls, Jackie says. I can tell these two aren't a threat. What the fuck do you mean by that? Ed asks. We just got back from our doubles Uno tournament in Paris. Maybe we want to spend our millions in prize money renovating a shitty old house with a ghost problem. Not to mention a fucking spider problem. Or a ghost spider problem. Spider ghost problem. Ed's not sure. The idea alone is making him shudder too much to ponder linguistics. How the fuck do you play doubles in Uno? Jackie asks. Steed huffs. Sounds like a question someone who's about to be outbid on their house would ask. Imagine trying to sabotage other buyers by playing a lackluster recording of incessant screeching. The Swede holds a horrified hand to his chest and looks up at Jackie, who wraps a protective arm around his shoulders. My baby cakes has the voice of an angel, she says. We didn't need to rely on a recording for that. Now apologise. Steed raises his eyebrows and crosses his arms over his chest, as if I would ever apologise to a grown adult who resorted to using a child's toy to try to frighten other qualified buyers away from purchasing their dream home. And in this market, people are stressing themselves silly just trying to make a better life for themselves, and here you are making a game of it with your deranged roleplay. Shameful. Yeah, Ed agrees, shaking his head. He's aware that technically he and Steed are technically also making a game of it with some deranged roleplay of their own, but they're different. Mostly because they're both really fucking cool and clever and working on their improv skills. Jackie and the Swede are just amateurs holding up a toy boombox. Where's the panache in that? Just lazy, is what it is. They didn't even arrive in costumes. Shameful. That's enough, Roach says. Everybody out. Serious offers only. Could I get some cookies for the road? Ed asks. Honestly, the least you could do, given your open house almost sent me to an early grave. Out, Roach repeats, pointing to the end of the corridor. Ed and Steed let out matching huffs as they reluctantly make their way toward the door. Some places just don't value customer service these days. Well, that was bullshit, Ed says when they're back on the porch. Can you believe him? Nearly dead of a heart attack because that so-called realtor can't tell when his prospective buyers are fucking around, and he doesn't even have the common courtesy to offer up a to-go bag of cookies. Yeah, Steed says. He's looking down, and his voice is soft, almost embarrassed, and Ed immediately feels his heart begin to race. Listen, Steed, Ed says quickly, about what happened back there. I think maybe we've taken it a bit too far, Steed interjects. Ed shakes his head. No, it was just for the bit, yeah? Like we always do? It was not just for the bit. It was the first time Ed had been fully, completely, 300,000% honest with Steed since they had started this whole thing. And as thrilling and exhilarating and perfect as it had been, barring the spiders, Ed would take it back in a heartbeat, if that would be the only way he could keep Steed in his life, even if it were only ever as friends. Sure, I know, Steed says, but he's not making eye contact with Ed. It's just, it seems the lines have gotten a bit blurred. Maybe it would be best if we had a bit more distance? No. Ed was not getting fake dumped by his fake boyfriend standing outside a fake haunted house while wearing a fake shirt front. Just fucking hell. He's always known that life's a dick, but did it have to be a dick while he was also wearing a fucking dickie? Talk about adding insult to injury. And despite the artificially of everything in this situation, the pain in his heart was very, very real. You saying you don't want to do this anymore?" Ed asks. "No," Steed exclaims. Then, more quietly, adds, "No, you're my best friend, Ed. I just think maybe we should have less intense personas for a bit. I don't know. Maybe next time you can be a rock star and I'll be your agent. Didn't you say you had some new leather trousers you wanted to try out?" Ed attempts to swallow the lump in his throat as his eyes begin to burn with the threat of oncoming tears. Because just this morning, if Steed had suggested Ed wear leather trousers, he would have thought they were to continue to engage in their will they or won't they banter. That maybe Steed was looking for an excuse to see Ed in some form-fitting badass clothing, but was still too shy to say it outright. And Ed would have quickly agreed, and then ransacked his closet at home to find a shirt that would really sell it. And he'd workshop all kinds of stories and scenarios and plots for their next performance. He would have been excited. He would have had hope. Now it just feels a bit like pity. But if that's what it takes to keep whatever they're doing with Steed, then Ed forces a smile. "Yeah," he says. "Yeah, sure. I'll find us a good listing. Something befitting of a rock star." Steed finally looks up at Ed, and fuck. No man dressed like an oversized Uno card has any right to look so heartbreakingly beautiful. "Thanks, Ed," he says. "Yeah," Ed replies. "No problem." Steed gives him a little wave, and Ed gives him a little wave back, and then Steed's gone, and Ed's left all alone. "Uno," he whispers.
That was Close to Home by xoxoemynn, read by Baby Kraken. There's 3 more chapters on AO3, so be sure to head to the links in the show notes to check them out. Also, be sure to give Baby Kraken a comment and a kudos on AO3. And if you'd like to record a podfic for us, do that. Just get the author's permission and send it to ourflagmeansfanfiction@gmail.com. I used to say keep it under 60 minutes, but now I'm like, whatever, just have fun. Finally, if you enjoy memes and other Our Flag related hilarity, follow us on Instagram at ourflagmeansfanfiction, all one word. Until next time, do creations, be cringe, commit crime. Bye!